We connected The Brain is Wider Than the Sky by Emily Dickinson to How I Came to Understand and Overcome Autism Conditions from the Inside Out by Steve Brier. Even though Emily Dickinson is talking generally about the brain, Steve Brier makes her words palpable and brings them to life with his example. Autism is characterized by a disturbance in psychological development in which language use, actions, and interpretations are all abnormal and cause the person to act out towards reality because they're living in a dream state individual to the person who is suffering with it. The writer of How I Came to Understand and Overcome Autism Conditions from the Inside Out, Steve Brier, dealt with this issue personally because he is autistic. But instead of living with this, he wanted to change it by becoming not only the researcher and doctor, but his own patient. At the time that Emily Dickinson was alive and wrote her poem in the 18th century, things like autism weren't around, and even if they were, they weren't widely known about. Still, she knew that the brain's power was unmeasurable, something that Steve Brier found out and used to his advantage to overcome his disabilities. Not only was Brier dealing with his own disability, but he also had a father with Asperger's syndrome, a disorder characterized by significant difficulties with social interaction, and a mother who seemed to have no inclination of sympathy or basic mothering qualities. He was doomed even before birth, yet he says it was life or death for him. Solve it or die. Dickinson says in her poem, "The one will absorb as sponges buckets do." She was making an obvious comparison to the brain and the sea, how the brain could easily overpower, but this also means that the brain could also absorb and understand anything you put forth. To start, Brier needed to do some research on his own condition after psychologists and doctors failed him. He looked to C.G. Jung for help. Jung was a psychologist in an asylum for many years who used Sigmund Freud as a basis to form his own theories on the mind, which were better than Freud's in Brier's opinion. Behavior of autists is a result of them trying to express their inner world visions through their real world actions. The name for this is projective identification, given by Melanie Klein. The movements are almost uncontrollable because it is as overwhelming to them and unexpected as it is to us. Behaviors include circling, speech disorders, bipolar disorder, and mind blindness. Circling is a result of an energy from their inner world overtaking them. Speech disorders happen from being in the presence of a God in their inner world. And mind blindness is the incapacity to understand others' intentions as people who normally. All this happens subconsciously, but the dreams that happen in an autistic person's unconscious play a big role as well. Freudians believe it is the true desires of a person that happen in their dreams, which is a wide belief. But Steve Brier identified with Jung's idea of archetypes having much more to do with it, and he used Jung. Brier chose to make sense of his disability, so with his understanding of C.J. Jung's ideas, he decided to distrust his illegal feelings, impulses, and sensations. He found a symbol for everything he did, slowly but surely progressed through understanding what his dreams, thoughts, and actions meant, which easily. Emily Dickinson says the brain is wider than the sky, for put them side by side, the one the other will contain. In Steve Brier's essay, he proves that obstacles outside and even inside can be overcome with just brain power and focus. She compares the brain with things that go on forever, like the sky and ocean, to show that the brain is forever. Scientists, psychologists, etc. have yet to understand or conclude anything concrete about autists, and Brier claims he understood because not only was this his situation, but he says he looked in when they looked out. Dickinson says the brain is deeper than the sea, so like Brier said, you must look inside. Both Brier and Dickinson understood this. Spiritually, Brier had to have a higher power within himself to overcome these inner problems, and in Emily Dickinson's poem, she says the only thing the brain can closely compare to is the weight of God, comparing them as syllable to sound. To achieve his goal of learning to ignore and overcome his disabilities, he had to put himself in all sorts of positions and let all his impulses take over. He meditated, used acupuncture, and did life-threatening things like drowning and crashing so he could record patterns in his behavior and diagnose them. Brier was living out the things Dickinson spoke about. She used imagery and metaphor to try to get the reader to fathom what the brain could do, while Brier used emotional appeal and real-life explanation to play out what he went through trying to become more and extend his mental strength. Autists live in a timeless parallel world. Time and timelessness is what it felt like when I was there. The measures I took brought me slowly into the world of human life, very slowly. I saw the process no different in quality than science fiction movies that depict time travel or getting sucked into the black holes of outer space. In this quote, Steve Brier explains autism like being sucked into a black hole or a time machine. It takes you away, and he explains how separating from the autistic behaviors was like being brought into human time as if he weren't a human being before because of autism. He showcases the brain's power to take you anywhere you imagine. The tone in Brier's essay showed his sense of struggle and empowerment, and the diction he used showed great progression using words like abysmal. Emily Dickinson seems somewhat persuasive yet laconic and impactful all the same in her poem. Both showed brain power, hers with imagery and comparison, and his with true life. Thank you for watching our Pecha Kucha on Steve Brier's essay, How I Came to Understand and Overcome Autism Conditions from the Inside Out, and Emily Dickinson's The Brain is Wider Than the Sky. Now, a moment of silence.